Hello everyone and welcome to the Rock Me to the Top Random Toolkit Tournament. This is Losers Round 3. We have SandKnight versus BaldwinIV, fairly big titans in this community, and we will be seeing them duke it out tonight with random familiars, random starting items, and we are in for quite a show tonight, I'm sure. I'll be joined very shortly by Chai, who will help me on commentary. But until then,
I'm here already. Hello.
oh, hello, Chai. How you doing?
Pretty well. How about you?
So the random toolkit will give these runners both a random starting familiar. Normally you would get Kuhn. We're about to find out what their first starting monster is going to be. Do you have any predictions, Chai?
I absolutely have no predictions. As much as I always love to check what will be in the seats, this time I'm completely gonna be surprised. And it's gonna be U-boat.
A U-boat, interesting.
Oh.
I don't know that we've seen a U-boat starter before. This is an interesting choice for starter magic, as it has a completely unique mixture magic with the summoning. The water version will actually hit everything in a room, and the wind and water element, or the wind and fire element, excuse me, will attack in a straight line. So we'll see if they end up using that or not.
It looks like it's a standard water version, so I somehow feel that because these runners are the essence of what you can call speed, they will probably not use that mixture magic until it's like really bad situation, because as much as this mixture magic would be useful in terms of the damage, it's quite slow, and these runners don't like slow.
But they're getting a block as their secondary. It's not much faster. We'll probably see them switch to that though and save their U-boat for the scouts on higher floors.
Exactly, Revan. Can you explain to us what is the other usage of the U-boat? Why the people in the chat are so excited about it?
Well, outside of its mixture magic, it has the ability to essentially be a star glass for the cost of, for the low cost, I might add, of only 16 MP per cost, or per use. And the real benefit there is that you don't really actually need to have the full 16 MP to use that ability. As long as it has at least one, it will still be useful to you.
Yes, exactly. And for those who never watched this game, this is a game where the goal is to find an elevator 38 times in a row, or 39 if we count the first floor. And of course, they don't know where the elevator is. And when they use the U-boat, it will tell them where the elevator is. So they do want to use this this tool in their arsenal. But like Revan mentioned, it's quite costly, so they have to have some ways to make sure that they don't abuse it, or at least they can use it every time they want to.
Yeah, so we'll probably see them hoarding eggs and pita fruits and water crystals if they get lucky enough to find those, just to keep their U-boat in functioning order. On the other hand, their block here isn't exactly cheap either. Its mixture magic costs a whopping 4 per cast as well. So we'll probably see them doing some very sparing mixed magic in this run, unless they get lucky and find an egg and decide to hatch it.
Both of our runners already are on level 2, which is very important. It's the most important level up upgrade that you can get in throughout the whole game, mostly because the HP jump is so huge compared to every other HP jump that makes all these lower floors a little bit safer, at least floor 2 and 3. On level 1 you've got only 16 HP, on level 2 you've got 26. And with 16 HP you can die to harder monsters with 2-3 hits, so it's good that our runners were able to level up and now proceed with the tower.
Yeah, low level encountering flames specifically is pretty scary. I just did an any percent run yesterday, and yeah, the first thing he did was hit me with a sled for 8 damage, so bit of a scary situation.
Yeah, exactly. And you have 16 HP, 8 damage, that's like half of your HP, and you cannot kill flame in 2 simple hits, so that's a very scary perspective.
And we're seeing actually, for the most part, a pretty standard any percent starter here. Well, SandKnight finding a blue sand and a water crystal. That's really nice. But both runners had a copper sword starter, a blaze ball, which is a little different, but more or less the same thing as what you would expect, and the egg, of course. So it's actually a fairly tame starting set of gear.
Oh, I was thinking like what has happened to Baldwin's familiar, but apparently he hit a warp trap and his block was left in the room alone. Luckily he was able to reunite with it. And yeah, Baldwin will have a run, because I was thinking for a while that Baldwin decided to diverge from the normal path of walking with a familiar and just go commando.
And while that is a valid strategy, I don't think that that's really the play here in a tournament setting, especially against an opponent like SandKnight. He will take any advantage you give him and run with it miles, and he'll just make the most out of it. And same can be said with Baldwin. If for whatever reason SandKnight loses his familiar early and decides to go solo, Baldwin's just going to take that opportunity and run with it as well.
Oh yeah, I think you can say firsthand how scary SandKnight can be without the familiar, because if I recall right, in your match in the game number 2, he did go without the familiar and he completely crushed you when it comes to time.
Yeah, I would not put that past him. I don't remember exactly the specifics off the top of my head, but I know I have done a few practice sessions with SandKnight over the past couple weeks, and he has, yeah, he's put me to shame at least once with a re-entry familiarless and climbing up over 20 floors with my 20 floor advantage and actually ending up beating me. So he's quite a fierce competitor when it comes to Azure Dreams.
And we know that Baldwin has exactly the same set of skills. Baldwin, I think, when it comes to non-Garuda runs, has the best time currently on the leaderboard, right, Revan?
I believe so, yeah. I'm pretty sure he's second place on the any percent board, and I don't believe any of his runs actually use a Garuda.
Exactly. Can you tell us what would have Garuda done to this run if any of our runners suddenly found it?
Well, having a Garuda would simply tear this run in half in more than one way. It'd make it significantly more dangerous and a little more safe at the same time with its abductability. For those that don't know, the Garuda has the ability to actually pick up Ko and transfer him to a random spot in a room. And I know it's a very, very cheap skill to use. Unlike most monsters, I know, I'm pretty sure it's less than 1 MP per cast. And pretty much it basically allows you to just explore the floor at your leisure, and in a case like on SandKnight's side where he's in a bit of a situation here, he could just simply abduct and be taken away to most likely a safer area. Now granted, there are some caveats to that with the you know, a Garuda could put you right next to an enemy and you're in either just as bad a situation or possibly even a worse one, to be honest. That is entirely possible. But for the most part, it's a get out of jail free card.
Yeah, Revan mentioned that SandKnight was in a little bit of a tough spot, but SandKnight also showed us right now how good of a runner he is, and even though this situation was tough, he paused for like a few seconds and immediately figured out what is the best solution for him. And in this case, what he used was the fact that he can take a hit, or in this case specifically, that it's his familiar who can take a hit. Because most of the familiars have some one specific trait to them in which they excel. Blocks are basically blocks of metal, so one would think that they're hard, and exactly that's what they are. Their defense is quite high, so they can take a little bit more damage than other familiars, like you can see right now.
Yeah, there is a bit of a caveat to some of the familiars with their stats. The block in particular, as Chai mentioned, actually has the hard trait, so he gets, whenever he levels up, he gets double defense. So instead of getting 1, he would get 2. However, when you level up in the tower, he actually only gains 1 with a permanent ability of 2. So assuming, I mean, and both runners should have a water crystal at this point. They found that on, I think, floor 2 or 3 fairly early. And what that'll do is it'll actually restore your familiars, any familiar that you have out. At some points, you can find a second collar and have a second familiar out. And it will fully restore both of your familiars' HP, MP, any status effects that they have on them, like being confused or put to sleep or anything like that, but it'll also restore their attack and defense stats. So that's definitely something they're going to want to use a little later once they get some more levels on their block, and he'll be infinitely more useful because of that.
At the same time, we just saw a moment ago on Baldwin's side the mixture magic of a block. It was an AoE magic. This is a standard genus familiar or block, in this case, which is a wind version. And the wind version for AoE magic is Earthshaker, which when used in the room attacks the whole room with quite powerful mixture magic of the wind element. And we could see that the water monster that was in the room was completely destroyed with it.
Yeah, and that's another interesting thing to note here with them using this type of mixture magic. Like Chai said, the earth version of the spell will actually attack an entire room, as will the water version. In hallways, however, it'll only attack whatever is surrounding Ko. As you see on Baldwin's side, that balloon that was behind the first balloon actually didn't take damage until it got directly in melee with Ko there. The fire version of the spell, however, acts a bit differently in that inside rooms or inside hallways, it actually functions the same exact way, which is covering a large area of 7x7 in front of Ko in a fiery explosion called Mount Burn. And if used correctly, not only can it do significant damage, but if an enemy isn't aggroed onto you at that point, you can actually have a chance to turn them around and just not have to deal with them at all. So I'm assuming at some point we'll probably encounter that to some degree.
Oh yeah, definitely, because we probably didn't mention this yet, but this game, when it comes to the elements, work in the typical rock, paper, scissors fashion, where we've got wind, fire, and water. Fire beats wind, wind beats water, and water beats fire, right? And we could actually see it a little bit earlier on a SandKnight side, how dangerous this elemental disadvantage can be. As much as block is powerful when it comes to the defense side, and when Flame was attacking it directly, it was only doing 1 damage to it. But the moment Flame decided to use its direct magic, which is fire, suddenly that block took 11 damage out of, I think, 27 that block had at that time. And with few other attacks, actually it went below 11 HP. So should Flame decide to attack one more time, that block would have been done for. So luckily for SandKnight, because he was really in a pickle there, he was first hit by the paralysis trap, so of course he couldn't do anything to protect his block from that flame. The block decided to fight on its own, and after a while SandKnight started running away when he woke up from the paralysis trap, and he hit on a sleep trap. But luckily for him, that sleep trap didn't trigger, and SandKnight was able to survive and save his familiar.
We see Baldwin actually making a bit of a risk here with his steel sword find, equipping it immediately. That had a pretty decent chance of being cursed, and what that does, not only does it not let you actually remove the weapon until you use a decurse scroll, which is that they're actually fairly common to find. However, the real issue with that is that you are now cursed with, you now have the curse status. And that actually pretty drastically affects your dodge rate, your hit rate, critical hit rate, things like that. And essentially what it does is it doesn't lower your minimum, it actually lowers your maximum. So with a sword you may have, say, 95% at maximum accuracy, but with the curse status it will actually lower it to, say, 70% accuracy. So just overall, you're a lot less accurate. And same goes for your defense. We're actually seeing, was that 2 back-to-back go-up traps
Yes,
on Baldwin's side?
exactly. We could see also at the same time that around floor 7, actually SandKnight did take a lead on Baldwin. So far, Baldwin was in a lead, but SandKnight found an elevator earlier, and we also have seen the first usage of a U-boat, where SandKnight did use it on floor 7, I guess.
And we're seeing the first use of an elemental seed here on SandKnight's side. He actually switched his block to water, which isn't a bad call considering floor 10, that both runners actually just entered, are primarily fire monsters. And as we were talking about earlier, that elemental advantage and disadvantage plays a big part in this game. So as you can see, he just hit 35 on that troll with his water. And we're not even going to see Baldwin attempt to use his mixture magic against this troll because it would just do so little damage, it just wouldn't be worth it.
Oh yeah, and there is one other very important thing on these floors. Like Revan mentions, they're mainly fire. His familiar at the moment is wind, and like we earlier saw on SandKnight sides, when Flame attacked such a wind block with a magic, it took huge chunk of its HP. On these floors, or maybe even next one, we'll start seeing one of the scariest fire monsters in the early tower, which is called Griffin, and it has very, very powerful, the most powerful fire spell in the whole game. And if for some reason that Griffin decided to snipe that block from afar, even that high defense might not be enough to help the block survive. So changing at this moment to water is very good idea in that sense that they will have strategic advantage over the enemies here.
Yeah, and it's actually it's something to note here that while Baldwin also had access to the same C-seed that SandKnight found and used, they are actually using 2 completely different strategies here. Baldwin is just opting to use his U-boat and get out of these floors as fast as possible while keeping his familiar wind. And I'm assuming he's probably going to be trying to level up a little bit on some of the water floors coming up against mules and kraken and the like. Whereas with SandKnight, he can pretty much fight anything on these floors fairly reliably because of his water genius now.
Well, now SandKnight is on floor 12, where we start seeing the kraken. As powerful this AoE magic is, it mostly shines when you have the elemental advantage. When you are neutral to the enemies, it's still very good magic, but you cannot kill them in 1 or 2 shots. Usually you need more. And krakens are very, very scary enemies that you mostly want to avoid. So might be so that Baldwin is thinking, hey, I will have a wind monster, and if I see any krakens, krakens are water, I will be able to take care of them.
And that's actually an interesting point that Poulet makes in chat. Normally, fighting krakens with a sword is a big no-no, because not only do they hit like a truck to begin with, but they actually recoil damage if you're using metal weapons against them. However, with the mixture magic of a block, that is actually negated. You're actually not hitting them with the metal, it'll just damage them with the magic, and the recoil damage actually won't go through.
And now we can see this thing that I discussed a moment ago, Griffin. We can see the difference. Bye-bye block.
Oh, 46 damage, yeah.
Baldwin used his mixture magic on a Griffin. It did 8 damage. SandKnight used the same mixture magic but of the water element, and that Griffin was hit for 38 or something. So yeah, now we will see how Baldwin can tackle this tower pretty much without the familiar, because I'm pretty sure he will not use U-boat for anything else but scouting. Or maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I would think that he would mainly rely on this for scouting at this point. He might, I'm not sure what he's doing here, because he definitely doesn't want to lose his U-boat, but maybe he's just trying to get it a couple levels for a little survivability.
We've seen just a moment ago that like the leader has been switched few times in a row, because I think Baldwin reached floor 13 faster, but then SandKnight reached floor 14 faster, so they're swapping back and forth. And it looks like Baldwin is walking around with a U-boat. He probably keeps it as a safety net just in case some scary monster shows up. But that U-boat is not leveled up, so its summoning magic will not be that powerful.
Yeah, not at all. The summoning magic, along with the blocks mixture magic, the AoE version, and the lowdown type ranged magic, all rely heavily on the level of the spell. Unlike the typical magic that an any percent run would have with the sword mixture magic of like Brid from Kuhn, it does the level does matter to a certain extent, but its usefulness kind of caps out at between levels 8 and 10. Whereas with the mixture magics we're seeing here, the higher the better, always.
That flame ball that Baldwin found right now really saved his skin, because he was in a tough situation. On his own against that Garuda and Troll, probably he wouldn't stand much chance, but luckily that Blaze Ball did help him take care. Oh, it's a new Blaze Ball. It did help him to take care of this, and the run continues. And again, we've seen actually the swap of the leadership, because Baldwin was the first one who reached floor 15, so that's very exciting.
And we're seeing SandKnight actually hold on to 2 truth glasses at this point. While he could use them to identify equipment or balls or, you know, eggs, that's probably what we're seeing him hold on to this for. Specifically, is if he finds an egg on these floors, there's a fairly good chance that that egg could contain a Garuda. And as we were talking about before, that would pretty much break this run in half. So it's nice to have the truth glasses on standby like that, especially if you don't need that inventory space immediately.
Baldwin was right now in a little bit of a pickle, because he was pincered by 2 monsters, and like we mentioned before, he doesn't have means to really handle the monsters easily. So he went sort of for a 50-50, a little bit more than 50-50 with picking up the monster. Luckily it worked out and he was able to reach the elevator. And now we can see how the summoning magic works.
Yeah, as you can see there, he only had to deal with 1 enemy there. That spell gets exponentially longer the more targets that it has to hit, because that dragon that he summons does loops around the room before it hits every enemy. So the more enemies you encounter there, while it will hit them all at the same time, which is good for mixture magic cost, it's also really time consuming. So it's not something that you want to see very often, although I am very happy that we're seeing it used finally.
And it looks like Baldwin really needs to use that magic, because he doesn't have many things to fight with. His flame ball... Oh, his Blaze Ball is empty. His U-boat doesn't have any MP, because that mixture magic, as much as like people would want to use it because it is powerful, it actually costs quite much MP. It costs 4 MP. And with Baldwin using all the time U-boat for checking out floors, which cost another 16 MP, that U-boat will not have many MP left.
And Baldwin's opting not to take the poison ball. While it's not the most useful ball, he does have open space, I believe, and there is some niche uses he might be able to get himself out of. Not in this situation here. He just doesn't have enough space to run around in. But later on, that might have been useful to him, and he could have always thrown it away later if he needed space.
Let's see how Baldwin will tackle this situation, because in previous floor, he was able to survive by taking a hit, and his HP is quite low now. I'm not sure whether he can take another hit. Yes, he doesn't take the risk. He decides to Olim that Manoiva, and he will scout and look for an elevator. The thing right now is that, like, as both runners are pretty much neck in neck, and it looks like Baldwin might take another lead, I would say that Oh no, SandKnight is still in the lead. SandKnight looks to be in a little bit better situation because his block did survive, and he's got a means to fight. So if Baldwin has a situation where he will not have to fight a lot, he might be faster. But the moment he will start having trouble with monsters, that run can end really, really quickly. So Baldwin has to be very, very safe here.
And we just saw Baldwin taking extra precautions. He saw a pair of copper coins right next to each other in a doorway, no less. And on these floors, that can be particularly dangerous, just because the little goopy yellow monsters, the Manivas that we've seen, once you encounter them on these higher floors, they gain the ability to transform into items. And we'll eventually see them later on higher floors yet again, where they have another ability to transform into other monsters' forms. But here, especially with him being, I think he was on 15 HP, regardless, it was very low and he wouldn't have been able to take a hit. He took extra precaution to throw items just to check that, which is definitely the call there. He had the time, he had the space, he had the extra items that he could sacrifice, and it just gave him that little bit of an extra edge to make sure that he could survive there.
Baldwin was in a really tough spot right now. Like, the starting rooms are not anything that you want to be in any time of the day. He had to take a lucky shot by walking up to an arachne and picking it up, hoping that it wouldn't wake up. It didn't. The moment he left that horrible room, he was pincered by a unicorn. So he had to take another lucky shot by placing that arachne away and hoping that pickup of that unicorn would work. Luckily, so far everything works for him well, and he actually was able to take another lead.
And that would have been really painful for Baldwin if that unicorn had gotten an attack off of him, because the unicorn is actually wind element, and I don't know that we've actually gone over this yet, but both runners are equipped with an ice shield, which changes Ko's element to whatever element he has equipped. And wind beats water here, so he would have taken a pretty significant amount of extra damage there.
So Baldwin is on floor 22. Did he pick up? Luckily, he sees the elevator and the spin, so he knows where to go. He doesn't need to use his U-boat. Because my point was that his U-boat MP is exhausted now. I'm not sure whether he has any herbs to restore even a fraction of an MP so that he could use that ability again.
Yeah, I don't think he has anything on hand, and he's just not getting the opportunity to pull out his U-boat and refill its MP even a little bit. These rooms are being very mean to Baldwin right now.
We were seeing a little bit of an elevator train, 3 floors having the elevator in the same room. But don't make any mistake here, because this previous room, even though he was able to walk up to the elevator, it was still very scary room, and he was actually taking some lucky shots there. The thing is that in that room we've seen blocks, exactly the same monster that they started with as a familiar. And can you tell us, Reven, what those blocks can do?
Enemy blocks have the amazing ability to be able to cast the low bind spell on you, which, as you can probably guess, is not a fun thing to experience. If you are in a direct line with them and they cast this spell on you, there's I don't want to say it's a good chance, because they actually do miss quite a bit with it, but assuming they hit you with that, they are going to paralyze you for a few turns, and they're going to put quite a beating on you. The block might not be the strongest monster in the tower by far, but they are certainly nothing to play around with.
Let's see how Baldwin can solve this puzzle, because he is surrounded by enemies without any means to fight them. So he's just hoping that those ice blocks will occupy the enemies for long enough so that he can run away.
Yeah, at this point, Baldwin can probably take a hit from one of these, and that's about it.
Unfortunately, that Viper throw was not long enough, so it is still aggroed on Ko. Enemies, the aggro.
Oh, he just switched that block there to water. He had the elemental advantage with the shield. He took more damage because of that. I'm wondering what is he trying to do here?
It looks like that's it. There is nothing that he can really do because that block cannot be picked up. And that's
And
it.
that's Baldwin down on 24. SandKnight just needs to find the elevator and get to floor 25 to take this win.
We didn't mention it yet. The goal of this match is to, of course, beat the tower faster than your opponent. But should both of the runners die on the same floor, the winner of the current game is decided by who reached the current floor faster. So at the moment it was Baldwin, he reached the floor 24 faster, but right now we see SandKnight seeing an elevator, he just needs to step on it, click yes, and he will win this round. So let's see. SandKnight, of course, doesn't know that Baldwin died on floor 24 because they're not allowed to watch each other's streams. So he doesn't know that he needs to step on an elevator. He was a little bit greedy, wanted those items, which makes sense. But now he did. That's game one for SandKnight.
Yes, SandKnight was definitely preparing it for being able to get a little bit of extra MP on his U-boat just to keep it in working order. Because like Chai said, they are not allowed to watch each other's streams, so they don't know if they're ahead or behind. If the other runner is down for the count, they are unaware. So he was definitely preparing for future floors there. But while Chai gets these runners set up for their second seed, do we have any predictions from chat about what will be their next set of starting monsters or familiars, or anything that you would like to see in round 2? I know there's been quite a bit of talk in the last few days, especially this last week, about not really seeing Napless or Killers. And while they are both great familiars in their own right for different reasons, I think I'd like to see Annapolis actually, because my usual go-to was actually just in this seed with the U-boat. I just wanted to see its mixture magic get used a little bit, and we saw that on Baldwin's side, so I'm happy with that. I'd like to see Annapolis make Chad happy.
I would like to point out this one thing that Kid and Mitten said. Yes, Baldwin did really good job walking without the familiar, and he solved so many tough puzzles with the inventory that he had. So like all the like cheers to Baldwin for showing us how great he is at this game.
A golem? Golems are interesting starters. They normally don't have their mixture magic unlocked, and they actually come with the same spell, or not the same spell, but the same mixture magic as the block. But they also have the added cost that if you attack with them physically, they cost 2 MP instead of the standard 1. So they're a bit tough to use, and that's an interesting familiar to see with these top runners here. That'd be an interesting seed to see. Same with Pickets. Pickets, especially if it's your starter, it will start with the lowdown spell, which is ranged to begin with, which is pretty good. But not only that, the Pickets diet actually makes it one of the better familiars to have in a climb like this, just for the sheer ease of keeping its MP up, because if anyone that doesn't know, the Picket can pretty much eat any junk off the floor. You can feed it an herb, you can feed it a coin, a sword, a shield, even a pair of glasses, and it will restore 50 MP from all of those.
Can you also, Revan, tell us about a small trick that we discovered recently with a picket and unidentified items? What can we use pickets for?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. I actually forgot about that. Through some testing, Chai and I have discovered that if you have a picket use its steal ability on an item that you are unsure of, for example, say they need to identify a scarlet wand, and they don't want to take the chance that it might be cursed, you can actually pull out your picket, have it steal the item off the ground, and it will let you know if it's cursed or if it has. Essentially, it will tell you its quality, which will tell you if it has any pluses or minuses, if it's cursed or not. So it's if you have the ability to and you have the time to, you pretty much have an unlimited form of truth glasses to an extent. This doesn't work on eggs. I mean, it does work on eggs, but it doesn't work the same way. Chai, you want to explain the eggs? They're a little more, not as familiar with the eggs.
Yeah, so with eggs, because this trick will not really identify the item per se. Like Revan mentioned, it only shows you the quality of the item. So it will tell you the modifiers of the equipment, like weapon +1 or -1. It will tell you how many charges the ball has left. And quality of an egg is its percentage. So the only thing that you can check with it is like what is the percentage of that egg, but not the content of the egg itself. So we will not be able to know that until the runners use the truth glasses or they actually hatch the egg.
And we're going to get a unicorn starter this time. That's a fairly interesting starting monster. It's actually fairly low on the potential starter monster graph, if I believe. It also comes with an AoE mixture magic, so it's going to be a bit difficult to use because its stats aren't super great. Its HP isn't super high, and I don't believe it has a ton of MP. So they'll probably be looking in their egg for a better familiar to run with here.
Yes, and it looks like it's a standard unicorn, wind one. Like we've seen in the previous round, wind is not the best starting element because most of the scary monsters in the early floors are fire. And if they're fire, of course, wind is weak against it. So they have to be careful.
And this is something that we might have actually glossed over. Just Manova in the egg, that probably won't see a ton of use. But we did see yesterday that I believe Hextree was looking to use one and just didn't get the chance to. But something that I think we may have glossed over is that your starting familiar actually can change the tower quite a bit. With the unicorn here specifically, we're not going to see much change. We're not really going to see any change in the tower at all because, like Chai said, this is a standard wind-based unicorn. However, if it had been water or fire, every wild unicorn that they encounter in the tower would also be water or fire. And in the case of a monster that doesn't have a mixture magic unlocked already, like this troll here, it would also have its mixture magic unlocked. So that can be really, really dangerous depending on what you start with.
We saw a moment ago that Baldwin was a little bit trolled by forgetting to set his familiar position. Most of the runners usually prefer to set the familiar position to be exactly behind Ko. That's mostly useful for the fact so that like familiar will not hit some traps that Ko wouldn't. But in this particular case, it was trolling him in a little bit different manner. Baldwin was fighting a troll. Troll is a fire monster, so of course unicorn is weak to it. When Baldwin was starting the fight, the familiar was right next to him. So the troll hit it once, and then familiar went behind Baldwin. And Baldwin was thinking, okay, now my familiar is safe. He just took one hit. That's okay. He took the damage for me. I don't want him to take any more damage because he is weak. But because position of the familiar was actually a little bit angled, not right behind Ko, then the next turn, when the Ko moved, familiar wanted to go to the position which Baldwin set it to him. But because this position didn't exist, he was in a hallway, and the tile on which familiar would prefer to step on didn't exist. So that familiar moved again next to Ko. And Baldwin was afraid that Troll would have hit that unicorn, so he actually had to lose a turn to move that familiar behind him and then change the position to not be in a weird position for the familiar.
Yeah. The AI and positioning can be quite a nuisance if it's not something that you're actively thinking about. Because this game is actually kind of unique in the sense that you pretty much have full control over what Ko and his familiars do through the AI cards that we've seen some of the runners use at times, and its positioning. Like Chai said, typically you runners will have their familiar behind Ko as to try and hit less traps, because traps can be really mean in this game, and in some cases just outright run ending, which as we've seen this week and most runners are pretty familiar with. But in the case of Baldwin, it was actually not necessarily a nuisance because he wasn't thinking about it. He actually just forgot to change his placement there. It's something that you're gonna have to do every time you start a run, outside of, you know, if you're playing the game on a save, it'll have, every time you enter the tower, it'll be the same. But because we're starting new seeds here, that's something that the runners are going to have to consciously think about every time that they go into the tower.
One thing that we can mention right now is that we can see our runners having a plethora of different wands here. Standard game, a vanilla version of the game, gives you as a starting familiar a monster called Cuny, and that Cuny gives you a mixture magic, which power depends on actually on the weapon that you carry, and the wands have a special special bonus in the damage calculation in this kind of mixture magic. But like in the previous game, when they were using blocks, they got an AoE spell. It's the same in this round where they have unicorn. The mixture magic that it provides, it's also AoE, and it completely doesn't depend on the weapon that they carry.
Yeah, for example, both runners could actually take their wand or whatever weapon of their choice off, and the damage actually wouldn't change at all with this particular spell, which is a kind of nice thing to have for these runners, just because they don't have to worry as much about potentially being cursed putting on a new weapon. The doesn't affect their shield, obviously, but having that little extra bit of not having to worry about can help quite a bit in situations like this.
I'm wondering, do they have water unicorn? Why? No, it's
No,
a wind.
SandKnight used a water ball.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Can you explain us what this water ball did? Because like we explained earlier, fire should be strong against wind. So why is his unicorn taking so little damage?
The water ball actually creates a barrier of water around whatever you aim it at. So normally Ko wouldn't ever actually be able to benefit from this outside of some shenanigans with another ball called Repel, which will give you a reflect status. But in this case, he actually used the water ball on his unicorn, which basically gave it not full-on immunity, but for all intents and purposes, fire monsters were just a joke to him at that point, and that makes your elemental defense negligible. Like, you can actually, if you use a water ball and you're fairly decent level, you can cut the strongest monsters in the game's damage down to single digits fairly easily with a water ball. Its uses aren't usually something that most runners will think about. Usually a water ball will be one of the first things to go if your inventory is full, but in this case it paid off dividends.
We can see SandKnight sending a little bit of love towards Baldwin by naming his by naming his character Pillar, which was pretty much a doom of last round match for Baldwin, and we could see a funny situation where Pillar is using a fire, so that's SandKnight for you.
And and we're seeing SandKnight pull off a Maneuver juke. It's a technique that the community is quite fond of. You want to explain it a little, Chai?
Oh yeah, that's actually something that I'm sort of sure that Baldwin pioneered and showed us how to do it right, because community sort of knew that Manoivas are special when it comes to movement, that they have a little bit shorter range of vision. But actually, Manoiva's range of vision is very short. It's actually one tile. So as long as Manoiva is not aggroed on you, if you are at least one tile away from it, even when you are adjacent to it, on coast turn, Manoiva will not aggro on you. So if you do certain movements like we've seen in the screen right now, you can basically lose that Manoiva without ever engaging it. And I'm pretty sure that our runners will be using this trick quite often, because Manoivas are met on floors 5 to 8, but like explained by Reven in the previous game, we also see them learning new tricks on further floors, like I think 16 or 17 to 20 and 27 to 30, if I recall right.
Those ranges sound about right. I know that the last time that you can find Maneuva is on floor 30, and they can be quite scary there, because there's a lot of scary monsters on those floors, and they have the ability to turn into those. And while they don't gain the stats of that monster, you can't actually tell the difference until you engage with them.
Oh yeah, and that can be quite annoying to you, because like we explained earlier, elemental advantage, disadvantage is everything on the higher floors. You need to know who you're fighting with, or you will be in a big trouble. So Manoivas are normally water, and when they, for example, turn into a monster that is fire, and you think, okay, I've got a wind attack, so I'm gonna take care of, or sorry, like they turn into a monster that is fire. So you think, oh, I'm fighting a fire monster, so I can like take care of it with water. No, you cannot. It will not get the advantage. So Manoiva keeps its statistics, keeps its properties. It's just changing appearance to fool you.
And we're seeing Baldwin picking up an egg on floor 7, luckily having a truth glass on hand, but it is just a volcano. So we probably won't see that being hatched on either side, because SandKnight will also find that egg as it was in the elevator room. We'll most likely see that being tossed at an enemy as an egg bomb. Mainly because the volcano doesn't naturally have a spell, so its usefulness is pretty low.
Exactly. In these floors, apart from the volcano, we can meet few other monsters or familiars in the egg. One of the more useful ones would be U-boat, which we have seen in the previous round. But another very, very useful, one of my favorites, is a clown that we do see on floors, I think 9, or floor 8, that have a very special mixture magic that allows our runners to use mixture magic at range. But unfortunately, that egg wasn't a clown, so we probably will not see a clown run, at least in this round.
Yeah, probably not in this round anyway. The clown actually has a fairly decent chance to be in an egg on those floors. So, and it's a pretty good familiar to be using, just mainly because it has the ranged magic. But not only that, the real perk of a clown is that it gives you the double MP or double magic growth. So every time it gains a level, its spell actually goes up by 2. And with the spell that it comes with, that makes it incredibly powerful really fast. And Baldwin actually found a restore scroll, I believe on floor 10. Am I mixing up the seeds here, or was that the second restore scroll they found in this seed?
I think that's some kind of, consolation prize for the wind monster that you've been giving them, because like just a floor before, on floor 11, Baldwin spawned in a room with two griffons, which of course could have very easily used the pillar spell on its poor this poor wind unicorn. That would have been the end of it, but Baldwin, I think, having the PTSD after the last game, he has done his movements very, very carefully to make sure that those griffons didn't even have a chance to use that spell.
Yeah, the bow trolls though, they can be a little scary on their own, don't you think, Chai?
I see that you're trolling me now. For those who have seen yesterday's match, I have died on floor 10 to a bow troll. They have so many weird quirks that like normal tricks in the game to full enemies don't work on them. And yeah, if you don't know them like I didn't know yesterday, you can die to them very, very quickly. Especially with a wind monster, which I had yesterday.
Yeah, what Chai is getting at here is that the bow trolls in particular have the unfortunate ability to be able to snipe Ko from very far away, which with a bow you would expect, right? But it's a bit more than that, in that you can't really get around them. There are certain items and traps that can cause different statuses, like Confuse, for example. And what Confuse does is it gives you a 1 in 8 chance of attacking any square around you. But the bow troll in particular has the uncanny ability that it just disregards that status effect. If Ko walks in its line of sight when it's aggroed, it doesn't care if it's confused or if there's an ice rock ball, which would normally take a pretty high priority for it to target. It just doesn't care. It will snipe Ko every chance it gets.
We can see right now on SandKnight's side how much of a difference does it make when you have water familiar and when you have wind familiar on these floors. Previously in the round, SandKnight had a water familiar and he could have disposed of all these trolls, fire trolls, very, very easily. Right now, that unicorn, when attacking a troll, was doing 1 damage, literally 1 damage.
SandKnight is having a little bit of trouble with these Dreamins. Now, there's a bit of a community joke that Dreamins they're just a Dreamin. They're not really scary, but in a situation like this, where they're accompanied by multiple Dreamins or other monsters like this, they can be a little bit scary in that their ability is to be able to put you to sleep. And while it doesn't hit very often, when it does hit, it can be quite devastating.
Oh, most definitely. There are certain monsters in the tower that are just purely scary almost every time you see them. But there are also some monsters that are not really scary until they are. Oh, wait. Luckily, SandKnight got a low roll on that hit by the bow troll, but he's not in any better situation. He's got 1 HP. Luckily, that ball still has a charge, and now his familiar is dead. And unfortunately, there is another clown coming. I think that might be it for SandKnight because he doesn't have a medicinal herb. What can he do here? He doesn't have Holy Scroll.
A Holy Scroll would be really good here. I think he's gonna have to go for a Lucky Lift to get out of this. I think that's really his only option.
But what can he do? Because like the Dreamins can still kill him. Yeah, if he doesn't leave the Dreamin now, that's it. Unless he uses another Fireball. Is he gonna go for that?
Baldwin hatching his Volcano.
Okay, yeah, that's good. 1 Volcano will kill that Dreamin.
I'm assuming he's gonna go for a Fusion here. Trying to get his Unicorn Fire, probably.
Exactly. So Fusion can be used for like multiple things. One is to just pass on the trait, second is to pass on the spell. But one of the also very important thing to remember is that like fusion also can change an element, and like we discussed earlier, being wind is not the best. Being fire in many cases is better. But I think what Baldwin was thinking that like I'm actually soon going to the water floors. Being wind on the oh, Revan, what happened? Where is his unicorn?
His unicorn just got abducted. We were talking about Garudas being able to abduct Ko if they're friendly. If they are enemies, they have the ability to just steal your familiar, transport them to some other room, and just pretty much beat them to death. And what Baldwin was actually trying to do there, he made a bit of a miscalculation. His unicorn, I assume he lost his unicorn early. I missed that part specifically, but his unicorn's only level 8, and when he hatched that volcano, it actually started at level 10. So he wasn't able to just he wasn't able to let his unicorn win that fusion, unfortunately. So I think he was trying to gain a few levels, and he gets a griffin in return. That's a pretty solid familiar, especially on these floors here. Being immune to the Picket's ability to steal from him.
And he also has a scarlet wand, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, he has a matching scarlet wand,
oh,
so he's actually looking pretty good here.
Unfortunately, Pilar this time is something that kills SandKnight, so Pilar twice decides the game.
Yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Monsters that have access to direct magic are usually pretty trigger happy about it, and griffins are definitely on that list. And not only that, but the griffins actually come with the strongest fire spell in the game, so when they hit you, you're definitely going to be feeling it. That's a bit unfortunate for SandKnight. However, it's a bit beneficial for us because we'll get to see another match, and as I like to call him, an unfriendly third. They'll actually be fighting to take the match set at this point, so we'll probably see them pull out all the stops on this one. So once again, chat, since we're having a third seed here, what would you guys like to see familiar-wise, starting items? I'm still going with a Annapolis, I think, just because it might not be the strongest familiar, but it does kind of change the way that you play the game a bit, just because of its its trait that it comes with. And for those that don't know, the Annapolis actually has double HP growth. So it has a ton of HP, and its natural element is fire, which is pretty solid. So it's definitely something that kind of changes the way that you want to play the game, because you can kind of have it tank a bit more for you, kind of similar to a block, but it just has a ton of HP. And if for whatever reason you don't like your Naples anymore, he can pass on that double HP trait to whatever you want him to.
Our runners are loading new seed. Once we confirm everything, we will have a third run soon. So we still have some time to give us those predictions. What can we get in as a starter, as an egg?
Poulet wants to see a killer. That's a solid choice, and I don't think we've seen one as a starter in this tournament yet. That could potentially make the end couple floors of the tower really, really scary. Or really, really easy, depending on how things go. If it ends up being wind and they get stocked up with fireballs, that could be pretty fun to see too. Noise and Palumpa, that is... I don't know. The noise is a decent familiar as far as stat growth goes. But its mixture magic is the same AoE magic that we've seen in these last two seeds, and I don't know if I'd want to see that again. The Palumpa, on the other hand, could be quite interesting. Poulet and I actually had a Palumpa percent friendly third in our match last week, and that was pretty fun. That could be interesting. What do you say about a Palimpa percent, Chai?
Uh, it's fun. I know that you've done it. I know that Pule has done it. No, Pule hasn't actually done it, right? He hasn't completed that Polompa round.
Yeah, that's also something to note. The noise is actually too heavy to be lifted, so its uses aren't quite as high as something else that can. I mean, the Napless and Killer also can't be picked up, but they're a bit tankier in the early game, and they do more damage early game, so they're just a little bit easier to use. Not to mention their mixture magic isn't nearly as costly.
Yeah, and we get the confirmation from Pule that he actually unfortunately died during that run. So you, Revan, are the sole conqueror of that Hell Polompa run. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, Chai. I was actually unaware of that at the time, so I think that took a little bit of the pressure off on me.
And our runners are off. I want to see some hype in the chat. This is a decider for this match. Let's see what they're gonna get. And
Napless,
Napla!
finally! Yes, finally!
Woohoo!
I'm sure SandKnight's got to be feeling good about that. He's been rooting for a Napless for a while now. Let's see what he does with it.
But he also mentioned in a Discord that he doesn't want Baldwin to have a sword mixture magic, which Naplas does provide. So I'm not sure whether he's super happy about it.
Yeah, that is a good point. Baldwin is very familiar. It looks like we have a water. Napless, if
I
I'm not
think it's
mistaken.
water. If it's a water, it's finally something that both of our runners will be happy with.
And we got a leather shield, a fireball starter, and we have an unnamed egg. And it's the first time we've seen that in this matchup. Chai, you want to explain the significance of that?
Oh yeah, some of you may know, those new don't, but familiars may evolve or monsters may evolve in the tower. And you can only find an egg of an unevolved monster. But because this is a randomizer, we randomize many different elements of this game. And one of that randomized element is that you can also find an egg of, or you can get as a starter an egg of an evolved monster. And that nameless egg actually is an indication of either evolved monster or a cuny, which also never comes in an egg form. In this case, it was a medal, which is not so exciting per se because we already have seen a block, and medal is actually an evolution of block.
However, that does give both runners the potential to have a very, very tanky familiar once they get that blue collar, because the ability to fuse them together for double HP and double defense makes for one very tanky familiar.
Oh, most definitely. And I think our runners are for the first time really satisfied with their starter items, familiars, and everything, because they finally got a water familiar, which is, in my opinion, the best one when it comes to the starting floors. Yes, you will have a little bit of a trouble against wind monsters, which is a cyclone, but luckily they also got a fireball, which can dispose of those pesky wind monsters quite quickly. They also got a leather shield, which doesn't seem like anything special, and to be honest, in early floors it probably isn't, because it only has a defense 1. But can you tell us, Revan, why our runners could be excited for a leather shield?
Well, the leather shield actually has a property that slightly increases your dodge chance. And while what Chai said is correct, that it's not so special on these lower floors because you just don't have very much HP to work with. So being able to cancel out a couple more points of damage with a higher level shield, like a steel shield for example, is quite beneficial early on. But once you start getting higher in the towers and you're taking, 30, 40, 50 damage a hit, being able to reduce 3 or 4 damage here or there is pretty minuscule, while the leather shield's ability to increase your chance to dodge and just completely negate all of that damage becomes a lot more relevant later on in the tower. And I do know from talking with SandKnight that the leather shield is actually his favorite go-to shield, so I'm sure he's feeling pretty good about that.
I'm sure of that too. We've seen a very interesting situation on SandKnight side, and now we see it on the Baldwin side. I was really excited to see what they would do with it, and like this situation is a wind seed. Of course, that's nothing scary or anything like that. It's just normally we always think that like wind is the worst element that you can have, and you don't want to come even close to it, which two of the previous runs more or less showed. But it can be useful in higher floors, and I was like thinking like, will they even pick up that wind seed? Because lately some of the runners started using the wind familiar in water floors, especially like 20s. So I was thinking like, will they pick it up, or will they think it's a junk and not even worth picking up? But both of them did.
I think, especially this early in the tower where they have all the inventory in the world, it's definitely worth picking up, especially because they have a fireball. And while most runners, like you said, try to avoid wind element like the plague, the wind seed has the added benefit that you can toss it at an enemy to change its genus as well. So for example, if they encounter an unfriendly monster, in this case, normally you would want to avoid like a cyclone, for example, but cyclone is already wind, so it wouldn't make much of a difference. If for whatever reason they encountered, say, a Maneva, and they're low on HP, they could toss that wind seed at it, make it wind element, and then just destroy it with a fireball real quick, and it's like it was never even there. It does consume the seed, and like you said, being wind on some of the higher floors can be a bit advantageous at times. I think having the water starter, they're going to want to hold on to that as long as they can.
Oh, I fully agree. And the interesting fact is that they also found a sea seed. So if they don't dispose of these seeds, I think we might be seeing at some point like switch of the element to a wind, because they can go back to water. And on the higher floors, especially like 30 plus, you most definitely don't want to be wind, because there are way too many scary fire monsters that wind doesn't do you any good. Don't get me wrong, there are scary wind monsters there too, because there is a golem, but you can get rid of wind monsters using fire spells like fireball, like Revan mentioned. You don't have any wind ball that could take care of the fire monsters.
Yeah, but not only that, there's just a lot less of the wind monsters. Like you said, there's only a golem that's really scary for the wind genus on the higher floors, and same goes for water. There's only really glaciers. But on the fire end, you have maximums, you have killers, you have dragons. You know, all of those are incredibly scary and can be encountered pretty much all throughout the last 10 or so floors.
Oh, yeah, I fully agree. That's why on the like highest floors, you don't want to be anything close to the wind. There are ways to deal with the wind monsters, with the fire monsters. There are fewer ways to deal with them because there is more fire monsters simply. We can see right now that our runners are doing pretty much the standard sweep of the early floors. Now it's sort of easy for them because they have water familiar, and they do have a wand, and with this mixture magic, like we mentioned earlier, the wand does matter. They get a bonus. Most of the fire monsters will die into heat. They don't have to worry about it. So they have all the time in the world, of course, assuming that they've got only 1 hour to clear the tower, but they've got time. They're not scared that they will die on this floor, so they can explore, build up their inventory, and then starting probably from floor 6, they will just like quickly go up as fast as possible.
Yeah, and both runners have got to be feeling pretty confident about this seed. Not only did they start off with a water monster for once instead of wind, but they also have the wand, like you said. They have the leather shield, which ultimately, if they get to those higher floors, is going to be beneficial just because they know it's not cursed. But they're also getting fairly stocked up on good spell balls too, which has been pretty uncommon in these seeds so far. I think they have at least 2, maybe even 3 different fireballs right now.
Oh, yeah. And that starting room that SandKnight spawned in, and now also Baldwin. This is a situation where you do want to be wind, and we see Baldwin actually like turning to wind that early. I think he has done it only because he does have a C seed, and he knows that when he reaches floor 10, he can go back to water, and those fire monsters there will be a little bit less troublesome.
Yeah, exactly. These floors, I don't know if we've exactly covered what makes these particular floors somewhat scary, but the blooms, the flowers that he was just fighting there, have the ability to brainwash your familiar, which essentially will turn it against you for a set amount of turns. And like Chai said, he already knows that he has the ability to turn his familiar back from being wind when the time comes, and in 4 floors from now when it starts becoming fire again. So it's pretty much just benefit at this point. He can turn his familiar wind, have advantage against pretty much everything on these floors, and with the wand he can take them out rather quickly, and then when the time comes he can just switch back to water and have the same benefits on those floors as well. And it has the added benefit of it clears up his inventory a little bit for some maybe more important stuff later down the road.
Although he did pay a bit for this swap to wind, because apart from mostly water monster on these floors, there are also some fire ones, and he did fight a balloon, and that balloon is a little bit tanky when you have a wind, when you have like elemental disadvantage. It wasn't that scary of a situation because he did still have a wand, and his familiar has a trait of having double HP, so it could help in a fight compared to like previously where they had a unicorn which was pretty much useless against fire monsters. Nablas actually has quite good defense, quite high HP, and quite good attack power, so yeah, he can still like handle fire monsters to an extent. But one more thing that I would like to point out here is that Baldwin found a paralyzed wand. It doesn't provide any more bonuses or power compared to their starting seal wand in terms of a raw power, but there is one huge advantage of that paralyzed wand compared to the seal wand that made Baldwin not think twice, even thinking that, okay, this might be cursed, I'm just taking that wand because it's so much better. Why is it so much better, Evan?
Well, the paralyzed wand, I think it has a 1 in 16 chance. Don't quote me on that. I'm not super big on the percent chance, but the paralyzed wand has a chance to actually paralyze your target, and when that happens, you pretty much just get a bunch of free turns to smack it with whatever you want, or walk away, or just not have to worry about it. And like you said, he didn't even think twice. He found a paralyzed wand and put that on cursed. Didn't care if it was cursed or not, because even if it is, his ability to be able to paralyze something regardless of his element is pretty valuable. And without having access to an elemental wand, the Gulf Stream or Scarlet at this point, it's pretty much his best choice outside of maybe a life wand.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And we can see also that SandKnight and Baldwin are on the same floor, and SandKnight is not using that paralyzed one. I'm not sure whether he found it or not, but he's not using it. And that may be a difference because like Reven mentioned, I also don't know the exact numbers for like how often the paralysis can happen, but it can come in a clutch. Like it can be so useful. We haven't seen this being used by Baldwin or like Baldwin having a lack of the paralysis firing off, freezing that Manoiva. It was like 1 minute ago, and then he got a free shot. He didn't have to take a hit from Manoiva, so it does come like as a very useful tool.
And we're seeing Baldwin take the lead back. These runners have been swapping leads back and forth constantly, and it's pretty exciting to see, to be honest.
Oh yeah,
just how close these runners have been in all of these seeds is pretty phenomenal. I don't think we've seen runners be this close for this long yet in the tournament.
Most definitely, especially in the run one, or in the game one, where Baldwin has lost the familiar, they were still like keeping so close to each other. I don't think that they went further than 1 floor away from each other. In the game two, Baldwin has went a little bit of ahead because SandKnight had really tough time with unlucky monster spawns and stuff like that. But right now, they're like so close to each other because it is a decider, so they're fighting for their life.
Hello, SpeedGaming Portuguese. Thank you for the raid. We are playing Azure Dreams. We're doing a Rock Me to the Top random toolkit tournament tonight. This is losers round 3, and thanks for stopping by.
We can see that Baldwin is already on floor 10, but or now 11, but his Naplas is still win. I wonder, like, is he planning to like keep that win just in case he meets Kraken? Is he not afraid anymore of the pillars?
You know, that is kind of a good point. The survivability of the Naplas is pretty high with its double HP growth. You see, he's level 8 and has 78 HP. So he's pretty tanky. If he can get away with it, which he's just gonna call it quits on trying to stay win. That could have been a potentially decent plan if he didn't get so swarmed by fire monsters this early on. But I think that might have been what he was thinking. Just try to hold on to wind as long as he could, but he would have just been taking too much of a time penalty there staying wind, so it just made sense to go back to water.
Yep, and we also saw that SandKnight did step on a paralyzed wand on this floor. It's a different one than the Baldwin found, but SandKnight didn't decide to go for it. I think he was just afraid of the curse, so he was thinking, okay, paralysis is amazing status to deal on enemy, but there is a chance that it might be cursed. I don't want to have a curse, so I'm not gonna pick it up. But there is one also difference that these runners did, that next to that paralyzed one, there was also a Leolum fruit. Baldwin did find it, stepped on it and decided, I don't need it, and went away. On the other hand, SandKnight decided to go for it. He picked it up.
Yeah, I think its uses here are kind of niche because the overall mixture magic cost of the Naplas is pretty low, and if he would have had to clear an inventory space for it, it would probably be pretty difficult to find a space for it. If he had something like a U-boat like we saw earlier, that would have been a real game changer for either of them that had picked it up, because that would let either runner be able to use their scout for free. I don't know, something like at least 10 times, because you get a set amount of free turns essentially, but you also have to account for bagging and unbagging your familiar, so you don't get quite its maximum uses out of it. But it still would have been phenomenal either way, so it's just not quite as useful in this situation, I think. I still think he probably should have fed it to his Naplas just to get that little bit of extra MP, though. I think he's running a little bit low, but like I said, the Naplas shouldn't be too much of an issue to keep his MP up a little bit.
SandKnight was trying to use clever tricks to run away from that Kraken, because even though they both of the runners are able to take care of the Krakens having that water familiar, they probably don't want to fight with it because they would have to take 1 or 2 hits at least, and Krakens hit quite hard, so he was trying to use clever tricks to run away from it without fighting it. Unfortunately, he hit the blind trap and probably didn't remember the floor map that well to walk around through it just from his memory, so he decided to solve this situation by using a Holy Bell. This is exactly the same clever movement that he was trying to do now to make a Kraken go after his familiar and then like bag it and run away from it. Unfortunately, Kraken has decided to go after Ko, so SandKnight has changed his plans.
Yeah, that didn't quite work out like he wanted it to, but he seems, maybe not. The Kraken is not letting him go. Confused or not, he is hot on the
oh
trail
no.
here.
SandKnight has the worst luck when it comes to this 1 in 8 chance, because when the enemy is confused, it pretty much moves randomly. But when there is any other unit next to that confused enemy, it will actually attack random tile. So at that situation, we could see that like SandKnight couldn't fully run away because there was a volcano blocking that path, so SandKnight had to fight it. And unlucky for him, that Kraken followed. And when it followed, it ended up in a situation where it had like height advantage over the Naplas, and there was 1 in 8 chance that it would hit the Naplas, and unfortunately it did.
Yeah, he's had some really unfortunate luck with malicious scrolls throughout this tournament. I believe his last match, he lost 3 1 in 8 chances against some Griffins, if I'm not mistaken.
That was the case. That was the worst luck possible when it comes to the malicious scrolls. His tactics were really good. It was really smart because, come on, it's 1 in 8 chance, right? What are the odds that they're confused enemy will hit you? But like getting hit by that twice in a row and then another time later on, who could have predicted that?
Well, not only that, I'm pretty sure that he got hit with a critical hit through that as well. So it was even worse than we're making it out to be. Not only did he lose the 1 in 8, but he also got hit with a critical hit at the same time.
And now we can see that I think SandKnight had the lead already from floor 12, but he's keeping his lead. He's reaching floor 14 first. Will he finally fight that Kraken? Septic has a very, very valid point. That Naplas has huge amount of HP. We can see right now 86. It can like easily tank few hits from a Kraken, and having a wand. Why did he change? Oh, okay, I get it now. He changed it to wind. This is this tactic that Revan was talking about earlier. You can throw a wind seed at an enemy and dispose of it with a flame bow. So that's exactly the situation that SandKnight decided was the best for this. But Septic had a very, very valid point that like Naplas can take a hit. Having a wand makes it so that Kraken will not reflect any damage back at you. It should die in 2 hits probably, so SandKnight is being extra careful here.
Yeah, both runners are having some pretty terrible luck with these Kraken. They're just encountering them around every corner possible, and that is really slowing both of them down here. Although we are finding an egg on 14. Chai, do you want to explain the significance of that?
I don't want to explain just the egg. I want to say that SandKnight just found a stream wand. Yes, it's cursed, but that increases his damage quite a lot, because he has now a multiplier of not only 1.5 that wand provides, but multiplier of 2 that matching elemental wand provides. And he was not thinking twice like Baldwin earlier. I don't care about the curse, I just want this bonus. But yeah, he also found an egg that we think Baldwin might find as well. And on floor 14, this egg, apart from being many interesting monsters like Clown, I think also a U-boat, It can also be a Garuda, and Revan explained to us already earlier how broken Garuda can be and what would it do to this run.
Yeah, generally speaking, especially in this tournament setting here, if you find an egg on these level floors, if you don't have a truth glass on hand, you hatch it immediately, or as soon as you get the chance to, because the chance of a Garuda, while it may not be the highest chance, I think it might only be somewhere around a 10% chance because of all the other potential monsters that it could be. And as you see here, we're going to see both runners attempt to hatch this just because the Garuda is that good.
Yeah, I fell a victim. Like I mentioned earlier, Revan fell a victim to SandKnight going without familiar and showing him how fast he can be. I fell a victim to Baldwin having a Garuda, which I didn't hatch. We both found the egg. I decided, nah, I'm not gonna hatch it. It's not so needed. I've got a good familiar. And I had a very good steady run. And I was around floor 25 when I was called, yeah, it's a game. I was like, what? And then I checked the egg. Yes, it was a Garuda. It's that fast.
Yeah, and we're gonna see both runners here take a little time, knowing full well that they could be behind, and it's actually, they're only one square apart away from each other right now. And it's a U-boat. Okay, so it's not exactly what they were looking for, but it's still really, really useful in that it has the ability to give them that Starglass complete layout of the map except for traps and monsters, and we're gonna see SandKnight get rid of his metal.
I presume SandKnight didn't find the blue color. I'm not sure whether Baldwin did, because if he had blue color, we would have seen this thing that you mentioned in the beginning, that fusion of a Naplas and a block, or a medal in this case, would be really, really good. Not only Naplas would have double HP, which is like a huge bonus, it would also have a double defense, or at least it has a potential to have a double defense.
And yeah, we're seeing a bit of a divergence here. I don't believe that SandKnight actually picked up the blue collar, whereas Baldwin here clearly has. So he's going to take a little less time to pull out his U-boat, scout, and go about his way, whereas SandKnight is going to have to put his Naplas away, pull out the U-boat, scout, and then repeat the process to get his Naplas back. And he's in a bit of a situation here now, speaking of SandKnight. Not only is he confused, but he's also blinded. So, yeah, he's not in a really great spot right now.
He needs to hope that his Naplas can survive the situation. I think Baldwin didn't fuse his monster yet, or his metal yet, or did he?
I don't think he did. He probably won't either.
Do you see that metal in his inventory? I didn't see it. Because I was thinking that like he doesn't want to do it now because this will change the element of a Naplas to wind. And I was thinking, sorry, that in the previous floor we could see that Baldwin did find the C-seed, and I was thinking, okay, he probably is not like fusing that metal because he doesn't want to have a wind elemental now. But if he found the C-seed, he could have picked it up, fuse, change to wind, and then go back to water whenever he needs to. But let's see, we need to see his inventory to know exactly what is happening.
Yeah, that's a good point here. He might not have wanted to fuse immediately because his Naplas would actually lose the water genus through that fusion because the block is wind and wind beats water out in fusion. But like you said, he does have the water seed to fall back on, and he's menuing so fast that I couldn't see if he still had the block there or not. But that's something that we may want to consider using on the upcoming floors, the low 20s anyway, just to have that elemental advantage, and then he can swap back at his leisure.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of wind elemental on these floors 20 plus.
And that's something that I don't think we've mentioned either quite yet. This game has very, very, very smooth and fast menuing. to the point that you can command your familiar to do something without the menu ever actually showing up on screen. And that's one of the reasons we're having such a problem seeing Baldwin's inventory whenever he opens it up. He's just menuing so fast that we don't really get a good chance to see what he has. But that is kind of a good problem to have, don't you think?
Oh, definitely. That's so scary about Baldwin and all these like super fast players that they can do anything before you even think what to do. So I'm pretty sure that Baldwin didn't fuse metal into his Naplas yet, because we can see the stats of the Naplas and the defense is the standard one, 27. So most definitely. Oh, yoink! Flame ball is gone. Tell us what has happened. Oh, and I can see that Shawnee showed up in the chat, right? Right? Perfect time for
Yeah,
Pickett.
it figures that right when Shawnee shows up, the Pickets go on a rampage. Pickets are Shawnee's actually his favorite monster. God knows why, but these little guys have the ability to just rob you blind. Not only do they have the trait Quick, which gives them 2 actions to your 1, they also have the ability to steal from you, and whether they're successful or not, if they use the steal command on you, they teleport away to a random room. And if they get an item from you, they'll still run around and they'll pretty much mock you to the point where they'll run right up in your face and then they'll just casually run right by you, and there's not really a whole lot you can do about it.
And in this case, unfortunately, we did see that that Pickett stole a very, very useful item, a fireball. Both our runners would love to keep all the possible spell balls, and I didn't see that spell ball being recovered. So now it fell victim to a tower. Baldwin has given a sacrifice to the gods of the tower, as we call Pickets, in hope of getting good luck. And so far it looks like he's building a little bit of a lead. He's now on floor 21, while SandKnight is still fighting on floor 18. So who knows, maybe that sacrifice was the thing that Baldwin needed.
I actually just caught on SandKnight's side, he's actually holding on to quite an inventory of star glasses. I caught at least 3 there. I'd really, really like to see him start using those. Especially with Baldwin picking up the pace quite a bit with his blue-collar U-boat use here. He really needs all the help he can get to catch up, and those star glasses are definitely the way to go. I don't know if he necessarily realizes that he has that many in his inventory, because there is a lot going on through his head. There has to be a lot going on in his head right now.
Oh yeah, and at the same time I actually caught a glimpse of his inventory. He does still have a metal, but now I'm thinking like, will this metal be used to like double the defense and...
Oh! SandKnight just lost 2 flame balls to the Pickets. He really can't be feeling good about that. I'm wondering if he's gonna try... It looks like he is gonna try and get them back.
It does look like it. Yes, he's getting one of them back. So finishing my previous thought is that yes, he can fuse that metal into Naplas to get double defense and a wind element should he needed that for the current floors. But now I'm thinking that he might be also keeping that block for a U-boat fusion. Why would a U-boat want to be fused with that block? Can you tell us?
Well, not only would it give it a bit of added survivability because of the double defense trait, but more importantly, and I think what you're getting at here, Chai, is that when you fuse monsters, it actually, the winning monster actually gets an average of both of the familiars being fused total MP. So in this case, I don't actually know what the MP values are off the top of my head, but say for example they're both 80 and they fuse a 0 MP U-boat into the block that also has full 80 MP, that U-boat will end up gaining 40 MP out of the fusion, which will give him several uses of the scout ability. And I think that's what you're trying to get at here, Chai.
Exactly, that was my point. Of course, we don't know what exactly Baldwin is thinking, but right now I'm thinking that this might be also his idea, because Naplas, even without that double defense, it's tanky enough. That like double defense would be to an extent maybe even an overkill. Of course, there are always there are always monsters which can kill you with these high stats, but I think for Baldwin currently the most important part is actually like to be able to use his U-boat as much as possible so that he can find elevators as quickly as possible. Oh no!
Oh no, that's really unfortunate. He actually looks like he got thrown pretty good ways away from his Naplas here. Fortunately, his Naplas has pretty good survivability with his massive HP, and he is water element, so that should give him some pretty good fighting chance. However, Ko, on the other hand, is not so lucky. He has very minimal stats, especially with this leather shield here and a wand being equipped. He doesn't really have a ton of fighting power, so he's going to have to rely on his wits pretty much to get out of this. And it looks like he did just fine. His Naplas seems to have gone down, though. That's a bit of an issue.
One thing to mention is that if I've seen it right, we didn't mention it really, but SandKnight has actually hit warp traps already twice in his run so far, and twice he was able to recover from it. He was able to find his Naplas back. Unfortunately, Baldwin has hit that trap on the higher floors where the monsters are much scarier, and he was not able to survive. Of course, for the survivability reasons, that's a bad thing. Absolutely no questions asked. But like as we mentioned before, going without familiar actually makes you faster. If you somehow get a little bit of lucky and are able to avoid monsters and fighting, going without familiar will make you faster. So that might be something that actually is not so bad for Baldwin. Of course, assuming that he doesn't die.
Yeah, and the good thing here is that he has two attack spell balls. They obviously they don't have infinite charges or anything, but he is on wind floors right now, which is pretty ideal for this. If he does encounter an enemy, he can pretty much just blast it away in a second with one of those charges. And like, ooh, yeah, there's a prime example of a wind monster right there. The stealth has the ability to spawn in when you arrive on the floor already invisible. As you can see there, he used his invisibility. They can spawn in like that already, and you will have no idea if they're there or not until they smack you one.
Oh yeah, and that floor 25 was really a good example of wind floor, because all of the monsters on that floor were wind. So anything that he had met or would have met could have been disposed of with the fireballs. Of course, you don't want to go trigger happy with it because you don't have that many charges, but he had a safety net which he could use should he need to. On the other hand, floor 26 already has some water monsters, and that fireball will not be that much useful against water monsters.
Yeah. If he really needed to in a very dire situation, he could throw 2 or 3 charges at one of these water monsters and get out of that situation, but that's obviously not ideal at all. He'll try to use pretty much every other tactic he can before that happens.
So right now what we see is that like we mentioned, Baldwin is going quite fast because he doesn't really fight anything. Oh, now it's a tough choice. There is a ball. You need balls, yes, but you also want elevators. And Baldwin did take a risk of hoping that these Mandaras would not wake up, because this room was not fun to spawn in, to check that ball, because he doesn't have that many of them. Luckily in this floor, yes, it's a fireball, so he's got some more firepower. But the point I was going at the moment is that like Baldwin is going really fast. If he is able to get a good luck, he will be able to probably complete that tower pretty quickly, probably even quicker than a SandKnight. But should he die anywhere on the road, which of course without familiar there is a pretty good chance for it, even with a familiar, but especially without familiar, I somehow feel that SandKnight has a very good chance to complete that tower with the familiar that he has.
Yeah, SandKnight has a pretty good chance of clearing the tower, I would think, with the inventory that he's sitting on right now. And I think SandKnight has to know that he has all of those glasses in his inventory. I'm thinking he's probably trying to hold on to them in the case that his U-boat, for whatever reason, is out of operation, whether he just doesn't have the MP for it, or if worst case scenario it goes down, he won't be able to revive it, so he'll have some quick floor access after the fact. And his inventory isn't very dire situation right now, so he has the opportunity and the leisure to be able to do that fairly effectively. And we're seeing on Baldwin's side, floor 31, our first appearance of Beldo.
Oh yeah, Beldo is one of very few chances of this game to actually tell you the plot. The plot is, I'm bad, I killed your dad, come to the top floor to avenge him. End of the plot.
Yeah, it's a it's a bit unfortunate how kind of cut and dry the main plot of this game is, but I think it makes up for it with its gameplay. And for those that aren't really familiar with this game, there is more to this game outside of just climbing the tower. There is a bit of a town building portion of the game. You can build up your house, your monster den. There's a pool and like a racetrack and stuff you can build. You can even build a casino if you really wanted to. There's also a bit of a dating simulation in that there's several girls around town that through various actions, just interacting with them, or in some cases retrieving items from the tower for them, that you can get to fall in love with Ko. And yeah, there's also that aspect of the game if that's something that you're interested in.
Oh no,
And
Baldwin is trolled.
Baldwin's taking some really unfortunate ice blocks here. Normally those ice blocks would have pushed another one. Oh god. Normally these ice blocks would have pushed him quite far away, or at least a couple spaces away, but unfortunately for him, every time he's been hit by one of these ice blocks, he's either been next to an elevated block, in which case it will stop his push, or in the case of that last one, he was just up against the edge already and there wasn't anywhere for him to go. So he took quite a bit of damage in those 3 attacks there. That was a bit unfortunate, but he found a medical herb, so it's not quite as bad as it was before. But now he's in an okay, he's using a holy bell here. That's a good choice.
I was thinking for a while, because we call SandKnight a world record holder for curling, which we call this thing that when Glacier uses the ice rock, and I was thinking that maybe like SandKnight is using some glacier powers or some kind of curling powers on Baldwin to call up this glacier to help him in his run, and it really did. Like, Baldwin was 1 hit away from dying, but Baldwin is not stopping, having good elevator luck, and already on floor 36. Now we've got a 12 floor lead. As long as Baldwin doesn't die, I think he will complete this tower much quicker than SandKnight can.
Yeah, at this point, SandKnight's fallen quite far behind. He is pulling off some pretty clever plays, though. On that last floor that he was on, he had quite a good use of Mahel Seed against those 2 Vipers there that he was encountering to get away from him. But at this point, unless something really unfortunate happens to
like this
Baldwin, like that, yeah, unless something really unfortunate happens, I think this is Baldwin's game. This is definitely his game to lose at this point.
It does look like a game to lose, because he doesn't have a way to run from this place, and he will need to take the hit.
Yeah, and he's hoping for... Okay, he got the tank hit, but now he's got to hope for a lot of lucky dodges here.
And
yeah, that's Baldwin down on 36. So all SandKnight has to do is get to floor 37 before the 1 hour mark, and he will take not only this match, but he will continue on in the tournament, and Baldwin will no longer exist in this tournament setting. Whereas if he does not make it, if he either dies beforehand or if he does not get to 37 within the time limit, Baldwin will continue and SandKnight will be out of the tournament.
And it's not an easy feat because I'm not sure exactly what happened. Why is SandKnight not walking around with his with his Naplas? Did it die or something?
His Naplas is dead. I'm not exactly sure what happened. We were kind of focused on Baldwin there for a little while with his pretty crazy luck, but I did see he opened his inventory a little earlier, and his Naplas is gone. He doesn't even have it in his inventory anymore. He sent it home. So we're going with just a U-boat now.
Well, the thing is, actually, I don't think that we mentioned it earlier. This is a roguelike game, right? So obviously many things are randomized. But what we are using right now, even though it's called a random toolkit tournament, there is one thing that we don't randomize, and that's seed. Both of the runners are playing exactly the same tower. SandKnight doesn't have that much in the inventory. He does have star glasses, so he can use that to find exits. But sooner or later, he will hit floor 36, assuming he does go there, and he will have to face the same harsh situation that Baldwin had. And if he doesn't have resources to handle that situation, it might end as badly as for Baldwin. And like we mentioned earlier, because Baldwin reached the floor 36 first, SandKnight, to win this game, needs to reach a floor 37. Oh no, and now his U-boat will die.
Yeah, his U-boat is pretty much gone at this point, so he's going to be relying on, I believe he still has some star glasses in his inventory, and it's a good thing he held on to them at this point, because they're going to come in real handy now. And it looks like chat is confirming that SandKnight actually hit the same warp trap that Baldwin did, and they both lost their Naplas to it. And then he released it because it wasn't useful to him anymore.
And now we see the first situation where SandKnight actually needs to solve quite a puzzle. He is followed by a Mandara, and there is a snowman in the path where he wants to go, or where he needs to go. So let's see what SandKnight can do about it. He cannot take too many hits from that Mandara, and he doesn't have any good way to dispose of it immediately. So probably we'll see some kind of usage of that flame ball.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate. The one that he has identified has 0 charges. The other one is kind of up in the air. It doesn't tell you outright how many charges he has. He may have an idea of how many charges he has, and at 37, he's not going to be able to take another one of those, unfortunately. Sir, trying to extend his life a little bit here, probably hoping for a lucky dodge, but there's not really he can do, and he's down on 26. Baldwin takes the match, takes the set, and continues on to the losers round 4 bracket against, I believe, Septic Tank next week. So that'll be another match to look out for. We will send both of the runners here an invite to commentary for a bit of an interview if they're up for it. I don't think that Baldwin actually uses a mic, so we might see him opt out of the interview, but I'm sure SandKnight will be in here shortly to give us a rundown of how he feels about his run here. While we wait for him to show up, does chat have any questions they want to ask SandKnight? We can toss him. Yeah, that is on my list, Septic, why he sat on those star glasses for so long. I think I have an idea as to why, but it'll be good to get a confirmation about that. Hello, SandKnight.
Hello, SandKnight. GG.
hello guys, you're not the one you want to talk to. Baldwin is probably... Well, I have stories, if nothing else.
Tell us stories.
Oh, Jesus Christ. What was the second seed with only one of them on only items on floor 1 to 5 and only flames? And that third seed, I mean, there was fireballs for days, so I'll give you that, but the seed was terrible.
But you finally got Annapolis. We've been rooting for that all week, and you guys finally got Annapolis, and you're saying it was a terrible seed. I am so sorry.
Oh no! I mean, it's not your fault or anything. But the tower really didn't want me for anything. I kept getting stuck in pincer attacks and just flow of monster that made absolutely no sense. I've not seen that rough a tower, and I really want to ask, like, how different was Baldwin's experience?
I think like in game 1, Baldwin's experience was horrible because he didn't change his familiar element to water like you did, and then for some reason he decided to fight a Griffon at close range with the familiar at his side, and the Griffon, being trigger happy as it is, decided to go with a pillar against that block. So Baldwin decided to go, of course, commando as far as he could, but you were pretty much neck in neck. It's just, of course, he didn't have resources to handle all the situations that you could with your familiar, so that was it. In the game 2, it was the other way around, actually, that you died with your familiar early because it was wind, if I recall right.
Yeah, you'll definitely want to watch this set of runs back, Sam.
Sure.
These your first 2 runs were so neck and neck. The lead swapped so many times, and you guys were not really more than a floor or 2 apart at any given time. It was insane. It was completely ridiculous. It wasn't really until game 3 that leads really became a thing. You guys were kind of close for a little while, and then Baldwin actually hit a warp trap. I think it was the same one that cost you your Annapolis, and he kind of just gunned it from there, hitting floor 36 before he went down.
Wow, that's really, really impressive. Yeah, I definitely want to watch it back and see how it happened on his side. But I mean, yeah, that was a rough set of seed. It was really fun, though. I'm very proud of how I handled most of these situations. That's definitely the type of situation I like to solve. In a tournament setting against Baldwin, not necessarily at that time, but generally that's definitely the reason why I like Azure Dreams in general, and I'm really, really happy to have been able to do that on stream. I'm just so stoked that Baldwin is moving on. I would have liked to do so, but I mean, only one of us could move forward, so definitely a man I want to see progress in the tournament.
We were even thinking this way, that like Baldwin had like a commanding lead at some point. Even before he lost his familiar, he already had like 5 floor lead on you or something like this. But then when he like lost his familiar, you know how it goes. You have no familiar, you just go fast as you can, because there is nothing there for you. So at some point he had even like 12 floors lead on you, and we were thinking, okay, there is 15 minutes left. He got himself into a situation that we pretty much were sure of that he can't get out of. And okay, you've got a Naplas, you've got really good familiar.
Yes.
You got this. You in 15 minutes you can even complete the tower, not even do these 12 floors. But then we didn't notice that actually chat told us that you did lose a Naplas to the same warp trap that Baldwin did.
I got struck by like 3 or 4 warp traps. That was terrible. And I knew I was slow on the third race, so that doesn't surprise me too much that he was that much ahead. I definitely was slow. But yeah, when I knew I was so behind, or I felt so behind, that my only way to win was actually hope that he gets killed somewhere. At some point, I even thought about just dumping the Annapolis and go with the U-boat, and that's it. And I was like, you know what, Sen? You're already behind. Doesn't even matter. Take your time. Use Annapolis. Move slowly. Just reach 40. And then the warp trap just said no. So I was like, oh, okay, all right, U-boat time.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. No matter how careful and
Yeah.
how smart your gameplay is, you cannot do anything about the traps. We've got Septic in the chat. I'm pretty sure that he can correlate that.
Yeah, exactly.
Paralysis traps, sleep traps, warp traps. I personally hate warp traps the most.
Yeah,
Use
yeah.
your
The
poison.
traps are the real run enders. The monsters generally you can kind of try to avoid or sneak your way out of, but how are you supposed to defend yourself against something that you don't know is there, and it has kind of a random effect? Like, I know, like we just mentioned, Septic can confirm paralyzed traps are run enders. I can confirm sleep traps are definitely run enders, and now we can confirm warp traps are also indeed run enders.
SandKnight.
But
Go ahead.
go ahead, Chai. I was just gonna jump into some chat questions. But,
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
Okay.
Like,
Oh.
SandKnight, do you feel like answering few chat questions? It seems like your fan
Yeah,
club
for
is
sure.
in the chat.
I don't even have chat open, so yeah, for sure. Fired it away.
So let's go it one by one. I'll ask the first one. You can go Revan with the second. A question from Septic. Why do you babysit star glasses?
I had a U-boat. No reason.
Septic,
Yeah,
are you
that's-
satisfied?
That's kind of what we figured. It was kind of like a last-ditch effort if for whatever reason you couldn't use the U-boat or it went down for whatever reason. You couldn't keep his NP up. It was just like a last-ditch thing. Unfortunately, you didn't get to use them. I think you still had 2 or 3 left, so it was a bit unfortunate.
I generally keep them for 30s. I don't keep them, like if I have 2 pairs, I don't start using them on 38 because there's a chance you have an elevator in room and or an elevator on spin. So that's kind of a waste to keep them there and then realize you have 2 elevators in a room. You didn't use them, but generally in the 30s, I'll start using them if I don't have a U-boat. But I had a U-boat, so I mean, it's slower, obviously, but I mean, that's a renewable resources that's gonna end up being spent anyway at some point. And if it dies, like to a warp trap or, because it died because I took a warp trap that time. So many warp traps. Then it doesn't matter. I still have the star glasses. Whereas if I use the glasses and I get my U-boat killed, then I don't have anything left.
I mean, that's pretty much the conclusion that we came to, and I think that's a pretty valid answer, to be fair. Because, like you said, if you lose that U-boat for whatever reason, having those to fall back on, especially if your inventory isn't pushing you to drop something else, it's definitely worth holding on to them as long as you can.
Well, you could argue that the U-boat should be in your bag, in which case I would answer yes, but it takes time, and I felt so behind that I thought that any time saves I could take, I was ready to do, including not bagging and debagging my pet every time. And also, we're responding very seriously to a meme question, so I mean, there we go.
Shawnee asked, how do you feel about pickets? Both of you in that third seed, both of you got robbed pretty bad. I believe Baldwin lost a fireball to a picket, and he just cut his losses as soon as he found the elevator. However, you were in the elevator room and got robbed of not only 1 but 2 fireballs, and decided to stick around, which I think was definitely the play there. Yeah. If you want to put your 2 cents in there.
I don't dislike them more than I already did. They were not the worst monster at all, and honestly, I got robbed because I dashed too fast without seriously taking my time. I was shaking a little bit, let's be honest and serious here. That was really rough. I did a lot of mechanical mistake on the third game. First and second was fine, but the third one I was like, okay, this is the final match, right? And it becomes really fast. So honestly, it's 100% my fault. I had exactly everything that I needed. I could use Naplas to block the path and stuff like that. If I got robbed, that's my fault. Then I decided that 2 was maybe a little bit too much, though, to leave to those pesky bastards, and so I did retrieve 1 of them. But yeah.
Alrighty. So another question, also from Shawnee. That one is very serious, so think about it thoroughly.
Okay, sorry,
Like, who do you blame when things go bad?
I don't know. No, wait. I know this one. It doesn't seem to come back. Maybe chat can help on this one because I'm sure they know. It just eludes my mind right now.
Yeah, and
I
if the
feel
chat
like
doesn't
it's-
know who to blame, they can join our Discord and learn who to blame, right? I will
Yeah, I
mention
feel
that.
like it's right on the tip of my tongue, but I can't really recall.
Master of
And,
segues, you devil.
Chai has just posted a link to our Discord. It's definitely something you should check out if this was something that you enjoyed. We have tons of resources for speedrunners, casual players alike. We also host the Game Boy version of this game if that's something that you're interested in. And it's definitely worth a check out if that's something you're interested in.
So we will left that question a little bit unanswered to leave a little bit of a mystery. If you want to learn the answer, join our Discord. We'll be more than happy to provide. And there is more than just that. So, Revan, do you want to ask that final question that we got from the chat?
Yeah, we saved the best one for last year,
Oh,
Sam.
damn,
I'm
I'm
sure
ready.
that you'll enjoy this one. Shifty Sauce asks, why does his late arrival to this match not spur you on to victory? What happened there?
What is late arrival?
He showed up, I think, in the last match.
Oh, okay, is late
He
arrival.
missed
Okay.
it. Yeah, his late
Can you-
arrival. Why didn't that spur you on to victory? What's going on with that?
Yeah. So, how would you answer?
I don't know. That's why we saved
Maybe you
this
want to
one.
blame somebody.
Shifty, listen. Okay, it did give me an energy boost. But then warp traps, and it warped my energy away, and then I had to run for it. But I did catch it, and then I got warped again, and then I had to run away and try to catch it, but it was dead this time. But it's fine. She's so full of like energy that I got some back more from you, and then all my pet died, and I was alone in the corridor with no fireball. I mean, you made me go further than I would have been if not. If that's any consolation. Thank you, Shifty.
So maybe a little bit of a bonus question from me. We know in our community that there are certain members who, let's say, control certain monsters, like Horza is controlling vipers, right? He's the mayor of their town. We have Shoni, who apparently has some control over Pickets, because the moment he showed up, Pickets started stealing items left and right. And I'm somehow thinking that you have something related to glaciers, because you are the curling master and the king and world champion after all. When you rewatch this match, you will see that Baldwin could have died a little bit earlier. It wouldn't have helped your cause in this case. But he was sniped by Glacier 3 times, leaving him with 8 HP. And I was thinking, like, did SandKnight have something to do with it? Did he use his curling powers telling Glaciers, do snipe this guy?
Yeah, you paid off the Picket with your fireball to get some Glacier snipes in there.
I'm sure. I'm sure I might have. They might have a little bit of compassion for a fellow Canadian, but you gotta understand one thing, and that is the sad truth. The reason I didn't get beat up by Glacier is I never reached any of those floors. So yeah, that was. I would like to tell you that they were friendlier to me, but I never saw one. That was a very rough set, man. I really think that's going to be a fun watch.
Oh yeah,
Well,
most definitely.
Yeah. You both put up quite a good fight. You have both had some really interesting plays. I know just off the top of my head, SandKnight, you had quite an interesting play with 2 Vipers and a Mahel Seed in that last match. And yeah, Baldwin just got a bit of a lead and ran with it, and we were actually talking about that earlier too.
Yeah.
If either one of you had made a mistake, the other one would have capitalized on it 100%, and that's just kind of what we saw here. So if are there any more questions we have for SandKnight here? Alright, if that's the case, I would like to thank both Baldwin, if he's still watching, and SandKnight for putting on a fantastic show for us tonight.
Hey, thank you very much, and a giant thank you to Baldwin, my friend. Yeah, it was a blast racing against you. I can't wait to watch it back. And much love, and go for it. Go for the end. So I'm second, right? That's how it works.
No. Baldwin dies to me should I have enough luck to defeat Reven in my next match, because I have a grudge against Baldwin. Septic, if you're there in the chat, I'm not wishing you the loss against Baldwin, of course not. But should Baldwin come in my way again, he's going down.
And yeah, that's a good way to segue into Baldwin will be continuing on into the losers round 4 bracket next week with his opponent Septic Tank in chat here. Chai and I will be facing off next week. Unfortunately, we won't be seeing more of SandKnight in this tournament. I'm sure we'll hear his lovely voice on commentary at some point in the future, though, so that's something to look out for. We'll also have Poulet versus Wooga next week. That will be an interesting show to watch as well.
Oh yeah.
But for now, this show is coming to a close, so thank you SandKnight and Baldwin for putting on a great show. Thank you Chai for helping me to commentate tonight.
If I can say one more sentence before we close it down. Guys, this match was a loser's bracket, right? So these players are nothing, right? They're not that good, right? So if this was loser's bracket showing us that amazing show, do come watch the match on Sunday, Pule versus Wooga,
Sunday.
Because this is pretty much the final of the winners bracket. So that will be the hype.
There definitely will be hype. Thank you, Revan. Definitely a big thank you for doing the commentary as well. Thank you, Chai, as well. Thank you, Revan. Thank you very much for the commentary. I'm sure it was on point.
We did our best. I don't know if we were on point all the time, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
And finally, before we close out tonight, I'd like to give a big thank you to SpeedGaming for just helping us to get our game out there, for hosting us as often as they do, and they're so friendly and nice to work with. Big thanks to SpeedGaming. And I think that's going to be the end of this show tonight. Be sure to catch Poulet versus... Well, actually, that's this week. Be sure to catch Poulet Wooga on Sunday.
At 2 p.m. EST.
Yeah, at 2 p.m. I didn't have the schedule open. Thank you, Chai. Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, of course. Be sure to catch that match. And I think that's going to be it for us tonight. So have a good night, everyone. Thank you for watching. And yeah, have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.